Vamos.
So we are ready to go, Virginia. Yes? Okay. Welcome, bienvenidos or benvindos. And thanks for showing the last session of the second Latin American MCAA conference. So we entitled the conference Scientific Collaboration in Pandemic Times. So today's last session, this roundtable, is a clear example of what we need to do to increase the scientific collaboration in these hard times. And the session is how to improve networking and collaboration for Latin American researchers in COVID time, okay? So today we will have 4 different speakers, and the idea is to have a different point of view on how to increase the network options and collaboration in Latin America. The first one is Andreas Treppe from Max Planck Liaison Office in Latin America. He will talk about maintaining international collaborative networks in the time of COVID-19. And then we will have Humberto De Fat from INTA, so the National Institute of Agricultural Technology from Argentina. And Humberto will talk about rethinking research in the face of COVID-19 pandemic. After Humberto, we will have Juliana Casataro from CONICET, so the National Scientific and Technical Research Council of Argentina. And Juliana will talk about researchers are at the forefront of the pandemic, development of a new adjuvant for vaccine against infectious diseases. And finally, the last speaker will be Paula Brennan from MINSIT, or Ministry of Science, Technology and Innovation from Argentina. And Paula is also the national contact point of MCAA in Argentina. And Paula will talk about international collaborations, a view from the Ministry of Science of Argentina. So the idea is that each of the speakers will have some time to make a presentation. And after that, we will have a space and time for question and answer. And afterwards, we want to make like a debate or a chat between all of us. The idea is to try to generate an informal meeting. So please, we want your question and interaction are more than welcome, okay? So without further delay, we'll start with Andreas Treppe. So Andreas, I will put your presentation. Virginia, I think you need to stop to share. Thank you.
Okay. So thanks to the organizer, you hear me well, yes?
Yes, perfect, go ahead.
Yeah. I will make a very speedy walkthrough what the Max Planck Society is, what we are doing in Latin America, and what are the problems and how we try to solve this at the moment. Next, please. So only to give an impression, I'm not speaking, let's say, from the point of view of a scientist, but of a science manager, and I'm not representing a funding agency, which is normal in Latin America. I'm representing a research performing institution, which is maintaining 86 middle-size and big research institutes, big in comparison to what I have visited during the last 8 years in Latin America. And you can see we are some 24,000 people and exclusively dedicated to research. The institutes are very autonomous, they have their own budget, they are not depending from any institution like a funding agency or research council. Next one. But let me give, let's say, a provocative insight. Because of course this process of globalization, you see it also in the number of co-shared papers, and here it's a nice visualization of several 100,000 papers from 2015, but we could reproduce it, published in Nature, talking about, let's say, the international networks which are today dominating at the frontiers of science. Next one. What we have seen was, let's say, the general simulation. What you are seeing now, these points are this less than 5%, which is science-driven and realized in Latin America. So two things, and one, fragmented, and two, very few and very isolated scientific activities. You will see that at the end, my argument is you need more cooperation, not only with us, with the North, with these big players, with the leading institutions. We should jointly establish more regional initiatives as well. Next. So Max Planck is highly internationalized. At home, more than 50% of our scientists are not Germans at every level, directors, postdocs, doctoral students. We have thousands of research projects every year with partners all over the world. So we don't need more international projects. We need better. Yeah? This is a provocative challenge for all. And we have more and more also institutionalized cooperations in the form, if you go to the next, in the form of centers. Centers means this is a big project between, let's say, 1 or 2 Max Planck institutes and the University of Harvard or University of Tokyo. So you see this international, this bigger institutional network is again in the north of this planet. In the south, there are some facilities, most are research infrastructure. The exception is, and I'm very proud to say this, that we have this partner institute in Buenos Aires, jointly with CONICET. Next one. So going into what we are doing, what we have done during the last years, you see here, we are also in, let's say, in the managing of science, starting, let's say, from the bottom up. We need the exchange of people. So if the number of PhD students or postdocs in our institutes with Latin American nationality is not increasing, we will not have more cooperation. If we have not more joint cooperations, then we will lack resources to deepen these cooperations. And if we will not have more institutional points, nodes in the network, and you see here this red and green points, which illustrate that at the moment we have more than 40 research groups in different designs, research groups between one Max Planck Institute and a university or a research institute in the region. Next one, please. So in a more systematic way, for those which are interested for themselves or for their young people, we are training doctoral and postdoctoral researchers. We have our own programs. So it is really worth to look at the websites of our institutes, at the website of my office, because we are publishing every month, let's say, the open calls in the different Max Planck Institute for the different disciplines or interdisciplinary topics. We have today more and more research projects which are based on joint calls. So in the past, we had also picked a PICT Max Planck call with the ministry here in Argentina. We hope that this will come again next year. But you see, this is spreading in between the different countries. And we have these different research groups, partner groups. These are groups established for postdocs, which are leaving a Max Planck Institute and will go back to their country. And tandem groups, these are groups where first the Max Planck Institute and the local partner are defining a topic and then making a call. Last call of this matter was in biogeochemistry with the University of Rosario, but not in Argentina, in Colombia. So next one, please. Numbers which should show on the one side, we are now very diverse in the cooperation inside the region. We started in 2012 with Argentina, and there was, except some groups in Brazil, there was nothing. Today, the main percentage of our cooperation is realized outside of Argentina with the rest of the region. And you see the numbers, normally we should divide these numbers by the million of people which are living in the country, because you could think the cooperation with Brazil is the most intense, but it's not true. With 210 million people, it's very low, the level of cooperation. But the level of cooperation with Chile, for example, is very intense with 18 million people. And we have such big number, more students from Chile than Argentina, for example, or more projects than Colombia, with also more than 45 million people. Okay, this is only to give, let's say, an impression how the situation was until 2020. Next. This is only to show you there will be different calls with different institutions in Brazil and Colombia and so on. My recommendation, not at the end, in the midst of my presentation, is what we are missing in general in our institutes in Max Planck, Germany, is that we would receive more initiatives, more applications from Latin America. Our institutes, as well as institutes of other big players, are rich in resources. There are not only positions for people, let's say, which are offered in structured in calls. There are always resources for individuals. So I would always recommend, if someone is looking for a postdoc position, he should analyze and he should send by himself, by initiative, an application to the respective Max Planck Institute and not wait until the next call of the funding agencies. It could work or not. Next one. Only to say we are operating also big facilities like a telescope here, part near to Alma in Chile, or a facility for climate and atmospheric research in Brazil. Only to say we are very flexible and we are also able to concentrate resources in bigger projects. Next. Coming to the chapter of COVID. Many of these things you should know, but I would like to, let's say, to say a few words about what's happening in our institutes, because Germany is also a country now with a lot of restrictions, which are very bad, let's say, for doing research and working in a research institute. And what are the things which are happening in the region? Next one. So, of course, shutdowns we had in Germany, we still have this problem, but in a more organized way. So it starts that the majority, the big majority of people which are working in our institutes are working with time-limited contracts. So it was necessary, and for the first time, let's say, in history, the employment contracts were extended. The Max Planck Institutes found solution for group leaders. Normally a group leader is for 5 years, then he is leaving the institute. They found solution for postdocs. Normally a postdoc fellowship is 2 or 3 years, and then And as you see in my arguments in this slide, all these restrictions for travel, the German embassy is closed in the different countries, so young people selected in doctoral programs were not able to enter Germany, to enter Max Planck Institute. So also there, we show a certain flexibility. Imagine that today we, in our 64 different doctoral programs, we have a series of young people which were selected and which are now financed by us at home. Not at home near to the Max Planck Institute in Germany, no, at home in India, in China, in wherever, because they are not able to come, or they will come, let's say, maybe in half or in 1 year. Only to illustrate a little bit how it is on the institutional level, but another message, let's say, for the Max Planck Institutes, this is possible because there's not necessary to ask any funding agency. This is the flexibility of an autonomous institute with a sufficient budget. So money was not the problem. The problem was really, and is, and are the restrictions in consequence of the COVID. Next one. So as I said, also for our work here in the continent, it was impossible. We had to cancel all these big symposia which were planned last year, and also this year everything is now virtual. And you know, in the relation between different cultures, like it is the research culture in the Max Planck Institute and the research culture in the public university are not the same in Latin America. So direct face-to-face contacts are essential. From my office, I'm trying to maintain what we can maintain in corporations, because I'm unable. Normally, I'm a traveling person. Every second week, I'm in a different country, different university between Mexico and the Patagonia. And since 1 year, I'm working from my home. Okay, so all this you should know. Let's go to the next and more or less the last. Of course, with the progress in vaccination, at least in Europe, we hope that in the next months, the situation will become better and better in Europe. So we see some light at the end of the tunnel. So we see, let's say, also positive outcomes like more dynamic communication, more data sharing, more open science, intensive use of virtual communication, and also, let's say, efforts to flexibilize, to reform funding procedures, calls, and so on. So in this sense, but I'm speaking for the, let's say, for the northern regions, for Europe, for Asia, and for North America, there we will see, I think, a very positive and very fast exit during, let's say, the next 6 to 12 months. But what will happen in Latin America, where resources are not sufficient? So you see my questions. Will we see less resources for research? And how could we prepare for this? I think yes, no? Less mobility. Because if we are proceeding in the north with the vaccines and here not, so you will not be able to travel. It will be more difficult to enter the US or Europe if you could not present a new kind of passport and to spend whatever months or 2 years in Germany. So will Latin America become more and more dependent from access to facilities in the north, from funding, from the European programs and so on? Or other type of questions, because this is the reality here. Will we see more public-private cooperation, at least in applied research, which would be welcomed? But until now, research in Southern America means public research, and applied research in industry is completely separated. Could we see more regional cooperation? There were so many efforts at the national level to develop sovereign kits for COVID. No, you would need a regional kit, very efficient, fast, and cheap. But you know, every country now is proud to have developed antibody or whatever test in a national public institute. The future should be a little bit different. So could we come between institutions like mine, like the Max Planck Institutes, and institutions in Latin America to a better division of labor and to more, let's say, joint regional, transnational research initiatives? Questions which I would like to put to you. And next slide. So my hope is, this is, you could say, this is the network emerging because of the emergence or because of the problem of COVID-19. So hopefully in the next year, we will see denser networks and nodes in between Latin American countries and in between Latin America and the three big poles of science development on globe. This is, I would like to finish. Last slideshow, my contact data, and I'm happy to answer questions. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Andreas. It was really interesting to follow all your comments on Max Planck and also the final slides with the recommendations or your point of view. I think it's really interesting. Thank you so much. So as I say, we will move to the next one and then we'll have the space for questions at the end. So Humberto, I will stop to share mine or Andreas' presentation.
Thank you, Pablo. I am trying to share my screen, but let me try again.
Yes,
please
maybe
let
now.
Yeah, please
okay.
know as soon as you can get to see my.
Yeah, it's there.
Okay, great. So thank you very much for the invitations to the organizers, and I'm delighted to be here and joining this all these panelists. I especially want to mention Juliana Casataro, which has inspired all of us as academics in Argentina with her work in vaccine development. So it's really a pleasure to be here speaking with you all. I'm going to try to presentation a little quickly, so we leave some room for questions. It's about my experience of research during this pandemic. It's a personal view, so there's a lot to discuss, but I'm going to try to give a glimpse of what I have experienced in my personal opinion. So I'm going to speak about a new path of scholarly communications, exploring the impact of COVID on research practices, a little bit about open access during this crisis, and the democratization of knowledge, and at the end, a little bit about rethinking networking, which is what we are doing right now. No, so for the starters, I'm going to share what I experienced from the beginning. This is there was an unprecedented shift in the way that we experience news about science, which started at the first day of 2020. For instance, I remember vividly how I read a tweet by Helen Branswell from the Stats, showing us that there was something rare in China. Then only 2 days after that, there was a tweet from Marian McKay, a biologist from Australia, and from the Machinery Lab, which were talking about atypical pneumonia in Southeast China. Eventually, there was some report in local news, and on January the 3rd, we got a virology post in Virology Down Under, which was talking about 44 cases of atypical pneumonia. And on January 4th, a second news, like in a larger news venue, which is Stats, which has been a light all this pandemic. So we were getting all this news in the media and in social networks, which was like strange, and it was a different way to cope with new information. Eventually, we got to the January the 10th. I remember it was at night. It was a Friday night, and when we got the news of the genome of the virus, which was generating these pneumonia cases. And interestingly, this genome was released in a blog, which is virological.org. And so the first touch that we had with this sequence, and we started to blasting and exploring and try to study, was a Friday night in a blog post. Eventually, there were two preprints, both deposited in bioarchive, which generated further information regarding the clinical aspects and epidemiological aspects of the first cases of this disease. And like a month after that, we got some final versions of publications in the journal Nature. So our first glimpse to this virus and all the research that we started to be developed were based on a blog post. So for instance, that weekend, in several places of the world, people started developing vaccines. For instance, Moderna they started to develop that same Saturday or Sunday, using this sequence as a template to. And of course, that weekend also they started developing RT-PCR detection primers for surveillance, for virus surveillance all over the world. So I'm going to speak a lot about preprints. I have been advocating about them for the past couple of years, and why I think they were really important during this pandemic and still are. One of the reasons is about time. For why real information is important during the pandemic. For instance, here in your left panel, you have 3 preprints which were published, which had very important information on how this virus transmits, how it goes from person to person. And eventually this information was crucial to develop sanitary policies all over the world. And between the day that these articles were posted as preprints in medRxiv and eventually published in traditional journals, beyond dates, I put how many people died from this disease during all this day. For instance, between the first one, there were 185,000 deaths of COVID-19 just in the time between this peer review of this report. Of course, there is a lot of debate of the different features about posting some research which has not gone through peer review, but we can debate about that in the answering questions. To give a view of the unprecedented generation of information and the contrast from the previous outbreak of SARS-CoV-1, here at the left panel, there is a report which did a forecast analysis of the generation of papers of this virus, and they, of course, they forecasted the exponential growth, just like the epidemiological curves we have seen of expansion of this disease. And to compare that with SARS-CoV-1, for instance, the information regarding the genome, as I expressed, was about 10 years before the first cases were published. And in the case of SARS-CoV-1, we have the first sequence a month after that. Or for instance, the 3D structure of the spike protein, which is the target of most of the vaccine development, was generated in less than a month by the McClelland lab. And for SARS-CoV-1, that took around 2 years. Or in the case of publishing this information, for instance, from the outbreak of the two 2002 outbreak of SARS-CoV-1, over 93 of the papers regarding this virus and this epidemic were published after the epidemic was ended. So in that context, several years after that, there is a paper which is in the right lower panel by Mark Lipsig and several colleagues stating about the importance of the use of preprints during the outbreak. They point out that during the Zika and Ebola outbreaks from 2014 and 2015, there were a lot of information that was available almost 100 days before those. It was available in preprints almost 100 days before those those data were published in journals. And he pointed out that even though only 5% of the articles regarding these two outbreaks were posted as preprints, that information was already there, available to try to generate some information, practices, and sanitary policies around them. So in this context, when we talk about preprints, we think about the decoupling, the dissemination with the peer review of those scientific outputs. And there you leave a lot of room to innovation in the terms of peer review. That's the possibility that now you have a lot of time to think about the many possibilities to try to improve a system which is a little anachronic, and it has less to do with newer times and newer technology. There are several initiatives that are trying to update these practices, which have been almost exclusively in private and without not a lot of information, with new initiatives that try to bring some transparency and publicity, with the publications in parallel of the articles about what was the limitations of the works itself, the answers of the authors, and of course the possibility to do this collectively in communities. So more than 2 or 3 people, 2 or 3 experts are able to assess this article, but with the information out there. So it's for everybody to read and try to build up on that. In that context, we brought a little manuscript which was published like 2 years ago, which feels like alive now, but we try to provide a perspective from the view from ECRs about what we think are the benefits of preprints. I'm going to share this presentation after, so you can get the links. So as I tried to mention, we think that science is like a kind of conversation where the different with the different members of this global community try to discuss the importance or relevance or different results. But there is another aspect of that, a barrier which transcends the publication of things, which is language. Because there are some numbers out there at the low part of this slide, which says this 5%. That's the number of native English speakers all over the world, and then you get 10 to 15% of the amount of people who is able to read in English all over the world. That means that there are around 5 billion people who are not able to even read English, not only speak, but not only read. In that context, there are some initiatives or some claims or people trying to push for the generation of multilingual research outputs, or at least the possibility to get to a more democratized view of those research outputs. In that context, with a friend, we tried to generate a very small tool, which is based in a premise which might be false, that says that on the contrary to non-scientific, to scientific literature, fiction, the translation of fiction is judged by aesthetics, different aspects, the interpretation of poetry, etc. But in scientific outputs, legibility, it's sometimes enough or fair enough to get a general view of a research output. So in this scenario, we developed this tool which is called Panlingua, which is based in a universal language which was thought about from the philanthropist and multilingualist and specialist and artist, which was Sul Solar, one of Jorge Luis Borges' best friends. In this very simple tool, which is in the panel at the left upper panel, it's you can just write your keywords that you are looking for of any topic that you want. Choose your one of 104 language and just get all the you're able to discover all the available knowledge which is behind bioarchives and meta archives in your language. So you're able to get a full text visualization in your own language of all those scientific outputs. Yes, this was a collaboration with Rich, which is in the picture on the right. So eventually there is a need for a different kind of tool, which I hope somebody tries to develop, which might get to, because the one that we developed was just to bring translation of all inputs available at these preprint servers that are only in English. But there is a lot of scientific literature which is in a different language. For example, in La Referencia, there are around 1.5 million articles in French, Portuguese, and Spanish that they don't have translation in English. Or for instance, there are around 79 million papers written in Chinese that we are not even able to search about them nor know what they say. There's a lot of knowledge there that could be instrumental, not only in this crisis, but for knowledge in itself. So, we are networking right now, and during the pandemic, I have shifted a lot during my interactions with different researchers around the world. 3 days ago, we have published this paper, which we had posted like a year ago, but well, eventually it took a lot of peer review, but it's now out there. I like more the version in the preprint, but you have both links there. This is a collaboration from several friends that I have, led by Sarvena Sarabipur, which is her picture there from Johns Hopkins, but it includes researchers from the USA, from Norway, from Germany, from Sweden, Tanzania, South Africa, France, Australia, and Croatia. I have never met in person these guys, but we have discussed it a lot in Slack, Twitter, or even in WhatsApp about the importance of virtuality in terms of inclusion, diversity, and to try to put a little bit down all the problems that we have association to in-person meetings, which are very expensive. They are a privilege. That means they are exclusive for only people who is able to afford very high, very expensive fees or get some waivers. In that case, they only get to travel 1 or 2 members of a lab, and that is leaving behind all the other researchers that are working in those teams. So also, there is a lot of carbon footprint of all those flights for meeting, etc. When we brought this was before the pandemic, so we analyzed it like around 270 meetings. I tried to find out what we spent in that, what were the limitations. In only those 280 meetings, we accommodated almost $800 million in expenses. That's a lot of money for different countries. For instance, it represents almost 50% of the national budget of ERD spending of Chile. So that amount of money was used only for those 270 meetings. And that money for several countries could be used for research, where we have very limited resources for investigation itself, or not even for publishing, etc. Finally, more going from an international to the local agenda, I am a virologist who has worked with, for instance, crop diseases, etc. But as many others, I have joined a team of very great people from all over Argentina. We have met and integrated our capacities to try to generate this project, which is led by the person which is in the red rectangle, which is Mariana Viegas, from the Hospital Nacional Ricardo Gutiérrez, where we try to work for in SARS-CoV-2 genomics, and we have been studying the different lineage of the virus who have entered our country, how they have evolved, and what is circulating around here. For instance, in the right panel at the top, there is a report that is going to go out today, which describes a little of the dispersion of the genomes of different lineage of the virus in my province in Cordoba. Or in the right lower panel was the first detection of a variant of concern from the UK, which is more transmissible and according to some recent reports, more lethal. So, which is very important to follow, and it has been an input for both the Ministry of Health and the Ministry of Science to try to provide inputs also to the executive to try to take orders to limit the spread of the disease. All of this has been virtual connections of several persons from all over the country. We have joined forces together, so that's the thing that's possible with, in this case, and very important, because we haven't generated even one paper, a scientific paper, I mean, published in a traditional journal. We have only generated reports, which are in Spanish, but we are sharing this with the authorities, which is very important information. So the impact of your research goes a lot beyond the impact it has in citations or traditional journals, etc. So it was a transforming and enlightening experience, and have changed a lot my appreciation of doing science itself. Okay, that's, I think, all I have to say. Thank you for your time.
Thanks a lot, Humberto. It was really nice to see your point of view. And you touch different points of how to deal with the working during this time. I really appreciate your point. Thank you. So now, Juliana Casataro, it's your time, please.
Wait, share. Oh, well, thank you very much for the organizer for this, the opportunity to present. I don't know how to present this because in a manner that fits with this topic. Maybe I prepare the work that we have been done before the pandemic and after the pandemic, and how we change the topic and try to help or work on this. And of course, I agree with Humberto, and thanks for the great work of the PAIS consortium, because we use all the sequence all the time for our work. So papers are good, but this work is really good. It's very important for us. So thanks for all the group. I agree with him. So just it's a little to show you what we have been done during last years and how we change and try to use our knowledge and also with other scientists of my institute. We work at University of San Martin and at the Institute of Biotechnological Research. This is a university and also from CONICET, belongs to CONICET. We have been working on the development of adjuvants for vaccines and more focus on development of adjuvants that can be used in oral immunization. And oral immunization among the different immunization routes is the natural choice. Is very easy to administer. You don't need needles. For example, when you don't need trained personnel, so this could allow the cost of vaccination. And for example, in the case of an epidemic or a pandemic, this could be great. You can induce local or mucosal, local or systemic responses. The gastrointestinal tract when you immunize oral. However, when you look at for example, our national immunization program and most of the countries, for example, here in Argentina, we only have one oral vaccine that is rotavirus. We used to have Sabin also, but now we only have rotavirus. And most vaccines are administered parenterally. This is because it's very difficult to induce an immune response after oral administration, because the antigens undergo digestion at the stomach and also at the intestine. And there's other problem that typically you have tolerance at the gut. That explains why we do not develop an immune response against food. So it's very difficult to induce an immune response. Typically, when you use a subunit vaccine composed of protein, you have to protect the antigen, enhance the uptake, and control this tolerance. An adjuvant, when you have a vaccine formulation, you have to select the antigen, that is the part exactly specific where you want to direct the response, and the adjuvant is a compound used in non-living vaccines that increase innate response typically, that supports the transition to innate to adaptive. You have different molecules, and at the clinic and in vaccines that are used now. For parenteral vaccine, you have different compounds, but for oral vaccine or mucosal vaccine, there are very few. So in our lab, we identified a new molecule that is from Brucella, that is a protease inhibitor. It's a lipidated portion of the protein, and we have found that this protein is a protease inhibitor, can inhibit partially pepsin, elastase, trypsin, proteases present at the gut and the stomach. Not all the proteases can be inhibited by Om19. But when we use, for example, stomach or intestine lysates, it can inhibit the stomach extract or intestine extracts. And in vivo, when you co-deliver an antigen with Om19, we have found an increase in the amount of antigen that reaches inductive site, for example, Peyer's patch at 2, 6, 12 hours, and in mesenteric lymph node, there was an increase in the amount of antigen, and this is short time, yes? And the antigen also we have found using the antigen quenching, reaches these sites in a less digestion manner. So oral co-administration with this protein, with the antigen, limits the proteolysis in vivo. And also, we have found that induces the recruitment of dendritic cells and activation of dendritic cells and inductive site after oral delivery in vivo. And most of the adjuvant used at present acts directly or indirectly on dendritic cells. These cells are very important to induce an adaptive immune response. These are crucial. However, we found that this adjuvant recruits dendritic cells, but does not signal to any any known receptor. For example, you know that, for example, monophospholipid A is used in vaccines at present and signal through toll-like receptor 4. However, our adjuvant does not signal through any of these receptors. We have found that inside the cells, inside dendritic cells, again, this acts as a protease inhibitor, inducing a controlled lysosome digestion and inducing a depot effect inside here. So the antigen increases the half-life of the antigen inside the cells, increasing cross-presentation and activation of CD8 T cells. And when the formulations passes stomach and then goes into the intestine, it will reach also other part where you face with proteolytic digestion, that is the brush border of epithelial cells and also inside the cells, the lysosome. And we have found that if the formulation contains this protease inhibitor, the antigen reaches the lamina propria in a less digested manner, because it can partially inhibit brush border proteases and lysosomal proteases. So we have found that when co-deliver this protein, we found two main activities: can bypass the harsh environment of the gastrointestinal tract because it inhibits proteases at the intestine and the intracellular proteases. Also, we have found activity inside the antigen-presenting cells and enterocytes, and it induces the recruitment and activation of antigen-presenting cells. The most important for an adjuvant in a formulation is to increase adaptive immune responses. We found yes, a formulation that, for example, OVA containing OM19 increases the production of antigen-specific interferon gamma at the mucosal sites. And you can see here that we compare, for example, with a protein that is another protease inhibitor from eukaryotic origin, and we found that it's like not every protease inhibitor can have this effect because this is used, for example, for oral delivery of insulin, and is not able to activate an adaptive immune response. So it's like, and this is very important, for example, for a protein, because if when you deliver a drug, you don't want the drug, the immune system to recognize the drug and induce an immune response against the drug. This is important for a vaccine, not for a drug. We have found induces the CD8 cells and CD40 cells that produce interferon gamma, also T helper 17 responses. This was with model antigens, and we also work with real antigens, for example, antigen with Salmonella, found similar immune responses. We also found increase in antibody responses at feces, and this is important to share with you that not for all antigens we found this. Most important responses we found using toxins, increasing fecal IgA against the toxin, increasing IgG when you co-deliver it with OM19. And for example, with Shiga toxin, we found an increase in IgA at feces, but we didn't found an increase in IgG at serum. And to tell a story short, we also try different antigens. And for example, this is a challenge assay. We immunize mice with an antigen from EHEC. When you co-deliver it, when you deliver the antigen alone, we found this, and then challenge mice with the bacteria and measure the amount of feces at the amount of bacteria at feces. We found when you co-deliver the antigen with OM19, there was a decrease in the fecal shedding. There was some protection, and you can reduce the dose of the antigen in the vaccine formulation. And we collaborate with different people around the world, and we study the Salmonella model, oral or intravenous, also parenteral. We found very good responses in comparison with other adjuvant. Toxoplasma gondii, also as a model, oral. Cruci subcutaneous, we have significant reduction in parasite after infection. EHEC, I already showed you. Sorry. And ETEC, also oral, sublingual. And this all was done in mice. And last year or 2 years ago, this is we also collaborate using chickens with INTA, and they have this model for avian bursal disease. And you can see, for example, that when the chickens were delivered orally with the antigen alone, they have these histopathological lesions at the bursa. However, when the antigen was co-delivered with this OM19, there was a reduction in the histopathological lesions. Also, we try intermuscular and boost oral, and we found also a reduction with the addition of this adjuvant. So we have demonstrated that the antigen is co-delivered with this protease inhibitor. There's a partial reduction in the antigen digestion and the stomach, and also in the intestine. It's like about 40 to 50% reduction in digestion, and this the reduction in digestion is only longs 12, no more than 6 to 12 hours, is transient, and also recruit and detect cells and activate T and B cells. We also have been, we also wonder if other bacterial proteases could have this immunoadjuvant activity, and trying to search other molecules with similar activity. We made an in silico screening using the MIROPS database. We made a screening trying to looking for bacterial protease inhibitors. We look for this, and then we screen for sequence from human pathogenic bacteria, and then we try to look for the ones that belong to bacteria that infect through mucosal sites, and also we selected those representative from every family of protease inhibitor, and with this screening, we selected 11 putative bacterial protease inhibitor, we clone, express, and we selected the ones that could be expressed at high yield that can be used as adjuvant. Then we selected those that can activate, those that can inhibit proteases present at the gut, and then those that activate dendritic cells. With this screening, we identified 5 new molecules that we found that increase adaptive immune responses using OVA model when you co-deliver oral. And when we look for the antibody responses, we found that they are not equal. They induce different antibody responses. For example, this induce IgG at feces. However, this does not. For IgG at serum, also we have found different responses. So we have a portfolio discovered at our lab of different adjuvants that can induce different responses, and we believe that this can help for different infectious disease. We have this intellectual property protected, and the opportunity and advantage of this adjuvant, you can only mix it with the antigen oral and also parenteral, induce CD4, CD8 T cells, T helper 1 and T helper 17. You can use to decrease the dose of the antigen. They have high stability at different temperatures and pH. They are recombinant proteins and enable subunit antigens and killed microorganisms to induce immune responses. So the pre-pandemic aims of our labs were to evaluate if other bacterial proteins inhibitors have adjuvant proteins, to mix them, to combine in cocktails, and to study their adjuvant properties, to study with delivery system, try to bypass the low pH, for example, nanoparticles, to investigate the role of salmonella, a lot of aims. However, when the pandemic came to our lab, and then as you know, there was a meeting at our Minister of Science, all the scientists that were there. I think that was not 1 year ago exactly, but we meet 2 weeks more than after the lockdown, trying to talk all how we can help on this, how the knowledge of all the scientists can help on this. And of course, 1 year ago, the most in need was diagnostic tests at the very beginning, and all to help on the daily care of patients. And when we think about a vaccine, we'll say, okay, no, a vaccine is difficult for us. It's just, I think that at the very beginning, all trying to make the test, and we keep it for other maybe for other countries that were more. Then our National Agency for Promotion and Science opened the call for grants, and And then we apply with I think the title was Development of Tools that Contribute to the Prevention of SARS-CoV-2, knowing that we can, after the knowledge that we have, contribute to perform a vaccine formulation and study the vaccine formulation at the preclinical level. And we postulate then in this call to use the adjuvant knowledge that we have, the patented adjuvant, and also use adjuvant that are now in the clinic, and use antigens. We just look for the capacity of the industry in Argentina. We, at the very beginning, we think in producing the recombinant proteins in baculovirus and also in mammalian cells. We study different construction. We evaluate different routes of administration of antigens combined with the known adjuvants already approved using human and also our technologies. And very important at the very beginning, remember that we have to set all the methodologies. The neutralization assay was not performed in Argentina for any investigator, any research. We have to set up all the immune responses, all for this project. We have the knowledge, but at our lab, we didn't have any technologies previously set up because we didn't work in coronavirus or in other coronavirus. And as Humberto said, we were working and reading the papers at the same time. So it was very difficult to work like this. It was all the days, plenty of papers, plenty of knowledge, and this, for example, this picture is now very, more easy to understand, but at the very beginning, when you try to develop a vaccine, you really need to know which is the protection, the immunocorrelate of protection. At the very beginning, it was known that it could be neutralizing antibodies that recognize a spike protein. Now we know that they are very important. And so this is a very important antigen spike recognize AC receptor. So this is the way that the virus enters the cells and infects. So inducing antibodies against this protein is very important. And this part of the protein to neutralize the virus. And also in immunology, for a virus, it's very, very, very well known that CD8 T cell responses and CD4 are very important. And because this is a virus that enters through the mucosal site respiratory, a mucosal antibody response, we believe that will be crucial for second generation vaccines. So, our aim was to develop a subunit vaccine against SARS-CoV-2 or SARS-CoV-related coronavirus that induces systemic and mucosal neutralizing IgG and IgA antibodies and specific T cells. In the vaccine formulation, the selected antigen at the very beginning was the glycoprotein spike and also the nucleocapsid. Now we are working more with the receptor binding domain of the antigen, but we produce all the S, N, and also RBD proteins in the baculovirus and also in the mammalian cell system. We work with both at the very beginning. I will show you only the most important results, and there are some quite from last year. Not all but I would like to share with you that we try all the adjuvant that we have in our lab, and also the adjuvant that we work a lot last year. This is only an example. For example, this is the immune response, the IgG against RBD, the protein. Animals were immunized intramuscular with the antigen with alum, that is the most common adjuvant that has the record in safety. with our adjuvant plus alum, and also in comparison with adjuvants that are used, that are from, for example, MF59 from Novartis, and this is from GSK. We have found that most of the formulation, only the alum formulation induces an antibody response after one dose, but after 2 doses, all the formulation induces similar antibody responses. At the mucosal level, we found that these 2 formulations were better at inducing IgA, specific IgA at lungs. And surprisingly, we found that all induce, surprisingly for us, that these induce a higher neutralizing antibody response, the one that has alum and one of the adjuvant that we discovered in our lab. However, all the formulation induce a good neutralizing activity, but this is 1 log higher than the other known adjuvants. And this is using the neutralized, the pseudovirus assay that also was developed at our lab since the beginning, and this also have been used for other labs, for example, for testing the sera from Ekin that use Immunova, uses the same assay developed at our lab. And in collaboration with Dr. Ostrowski from Invis UBA, he has the assay, but it's the neutralizing assay using the wild type virus. And we found again that this vaccine formulation used very, very good neutralizing activity against the virus in comparison with formulation that contains common adjuvants. And this formulation also induced T helper 1 and CD8 T cell specific responses that is in line with the requirement for a SARS-CoV-2 vaccine. So if we have a lot of work to do. We are also working on oral and nasal. I can show you all the results, but since at the beginning, the most important correlate of protection was antibodies at serum. That's why we focus on intramuscular to induce very good antibodies at serum. And now we are trying mixed oral and intramuscular a lot. But this vaccine formulation, since December, we entered in collaboration with a company in Argentina that will produce this prototype under GMP production. And then with this, we can, and we are also performing the studies in mice. With this GMP formulation, we want to start a phase 1 in Argentina. So for this, we have a lot of work to do. We did a very, very little in 1 year for the work that we have to do, but we are I think working, trying to perform this and asking for more financiation also to perform. But with the company, now we think that we have more capacity to do it. So thank you very much. I appreciate if you have any questions. This is a group. This is my group, but also we are working with a group of Diego Alvarez, that is a virologist on the SARS-CoV-2 field.
Thanks a lot, Juliana, for telling us about your very, very impressive work, designing a local tool or weapon to kill this pandemic. Thank you. So as I say, we will have time for question and answer at the end. So now we will have Paula Brennan from MinSit and National Contact Book of Argentina. So Paula, it's your turn.
Hello, thank you, Pablo. Thank you for the invitation. Well, I'm an NCP of Marie-Slawska reactions in the Office Liaison in Science and Technology, Argentina, European Union, in the Ministry of Science and Technology. Sorry, because I couldn't prepare slides because I have coronavirus right now, so I don't feel in the more on my best time. I'm a little tired, and I will be really brief this today. For a start, my speaking, I want to say that my objective as an NCP is to help institutions and researchers to do their projects in cooperation with other countries, identifying their topics and priorities, and the better funding to develop their projects, maybe with European funding, on another times, another kind of funding that we can have. Well, we know that the technology is changing globalization. It's a fact that people can do things in the other country, even virtually. And adding the new context of the pandemic, the cooperation increased, and it was absolutely necessary to build together to find fast and effective solutions. Collaborative research and innovation initiatives, international mobility and cooperation were done virtually due to several months on which we were isolated. The communication is vital for the policymakers and requires an integrative, collaborative, and managing real-time defined data and information to produce the best decision-making. Local, regional, and national governments play a key role in the pandemic, and we need to integrate efforts from academia, civil society, and the private sector. Technology helps to eliminate barriers. Now we can work at home. Domestic communications are possible and cheaper. There are many online freelancing platforms that we can use, like this tool that we are using now. They are advanced communication, and we realize that globalization is not only for goods, what we make, also for service and jobs, what we do. Talking about Argentina in particular, the Ministry of Science, Technology and Innovation, before the pandemic, we had some positive infrastructures and way to work that helped to afford the problems that it brought, this pandemic. And since the pandemic, we need to take a big effort to summarize all the knowledge to generate new ideas and projects from the university, the CONICET, hospitals, centers of research. That means that our priorities were changes the last year. We promote interdisciplinary projects through different calls with a great answer from the researchers. We receive a lot of projects with national fundings, more than 500 projects in all the territory of different institutions. Some institutions very famous, other no, other a new surprise. For different kind of projects like covers, mask, management of social problems during the pandemic, protocols, vaccines, and different therapies. We were already working virtually. We have digital management of all our files and our work, so that make it easy to work from home. And we have an infrastructure platform where each researcher can use infrastructure of other institutions for free. They need only to ask for a turn to use it. And we have a lot of experience in virtual tools because we are part of Europe, so we know how to work digital with this kind of webinars and meetings, virtual meetings. Talking about the cooperation with Latin Americas, we have a long story. It is important to remark that we have a similar culture and similar circumstances that make easier to understand the needs and the capabilities to manage difficulties. And it's very important to have open access for scientific information, and open data facilitate better and faster research towards vaccines and inform public health measures. Also, it's really important the digital communication and events. And now we have some tools to help on the language problem and on the communications themselves. That we have to work a little more here in Argentina is the cooperation with the non-academic sector, the enterprises. It's a little hard to work with them because it's difficult to notice them that it's possible to have different kind of project on research with other countries. So that is our work to make them know these possibilities that they have. Changes that we must do with this last year. We had to redefine the implementation of some projects because there were many activities that couldn't do that because they couldn't travel, and found a way to continue with the proposed action, postpone some activities, and ask for new deadlines. This take a lot of time and work with the researchers. Also, we must redefine, as I said, the priorities of the national budget and guide the budget for research on COVID-19, reinforcing international cooperation on that issue. The new possibilities that we have are that everything is virtual, virtual meeting, virtual workers for us that we are so far from Europe. That was very good because we can grow up the participation of the academic and non-academic sector. We had more interaction with other NCP due to the online meetings, learning about new ways of communication and to get better participation of our researchers. And we all the time we could continue helping researchers on the proposals with the search and choice of partners and looking for goals not only as a size of the European Union. And we maintaining links between partners and contacts that researchers have. We promote that and think also not only the possibilities that they may be lost because of the pandemic, so thinking on future projects that they can do. And this is, I think, the lockdown helped to think new ideas and think a new kind of work between them. We look for excellent projects, so we work a lot with the researchers in the different specific details that they must take into account, like how to prepare this curriculum vitae, or how to prepare a good proposal, about the evaluation of the proposal and everything like this. And well, we have I want to remark that we have a high level of success projects. We are the one country in the Latin America with the project of staff change. So we are very glad to have this excellent level work. Well, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Paula. I have some internet problems in my house, so sorry if the connection is lost. So thanks again, Paula. So now we have some time to make some question and answers. in the chat there was to Andreas. People want to know about the research areas covered by Max Planck. I think is every area, no? I'm okay?
Not, well, we are doing research, basic research, not applied, yeah? And this in, you could call it frontiers. So in fields where you have at this moment a few groups in the world working on this frontier. So that means we are not doing everything, but we have also 20 institutes in legal sciences and legal studies, social sciences. But we are strong, we are #1 in astronomy, for example, worldwide, in the physical sciences and in the life sciences. Yeah, so.
Okay, thank you. So now I have a question to Humberto, please. So I really like your highlight of the time frame for communication using blogs and social media and like a more informal ways to communicate science. Okay. Do you think that there is now we need to think about a different ways of communicate science, not only during pandemic, so from now on in this way to make it more accessible and also in a more time frame way? What's your idea about this?
I think I have several thoughts around the topic. Eventually about different aspects. I think that the advancement of the adoption of preprints will shift the article publishing industry in different ways. For instance, I'm starting to see a lot for, I don't know, a paper that I read yesterday in Nature, which was published yesterday, which was published 3 days ago, and it was about the South African variant. And the results were 2.5 months old, in a sense. But of course, they were reviewed now by experts, etc. But there has been so many things about that. I mean, there is even a Moderna vaccine starting phase 1 clinical trials, especially designed for this variant. So in this context, I think that traditional journals are starting to experience that they lost one of the key features, which is novelty. So if the adoption grows and eventually people put their idea there online before, that's a very important competition of the traditional way of publishing things. There are some journals that are trying to shift this. For instance, I don't know, there is some journals that now are only accepting submissions if they are, those articles have been preprinted. And there have been a very important shift in journals that I don't think is going to return to the way it was before. For instance, the New England Journal of Medicine, the main editor of that journal was Ingelfinger, which was the creator of the Ingelfinger rule, which is exactly that they don't accept submission of things that have been published elsewhere. And since the start of the pandemic, they have started accepting preprints. They even encourage them. So that's like a thing that has to do a lot with the shift that I don't think is going to return as it was before. There is also plenty other aspects. For instance, Twitter has been fantastically useful, sometimes like a platform for real-time review of articles posted like an hour ago in a preprint server. There's I have been using that as a proxy. I mean, I know several experts which I trust in what they in their experience in different aspects of virology, and if I see a thread coming from them about an article, that's a proxy I use to try to filter some of the info going there. There are around 45,000 preprints posted on COVID since last February from 2020. And there are around 140,000 articles in total in Google Scholar about this topic. So it is impossible to follow all of this. So you have to use some proxy. And if I say that journals, traditional journals, do not have the novelty, or at least it's not impractical for the management of a pandemic, you need different ways to try to cope with all this information. Some of them are those community building capacity platforms. They try to do peer review, like very rapid review of several articles and try to give some impact, etc., which is very difficult. And we have to think of different measure of research assessment based in impact besides citations. What I mean is sometimes the visibility or the possibilities or the importance of some works in public policy, for instance, are something which is very difficult to measure, but it has a lot of importance. I don't know. For instance, if you give an interview to the general media about something regarding this virus in a newspaper in Argentina, you probably get like 500,000 view of that. And I have papers that have been read by 100 persons because I read the counters. So in terms of visibility, there is we have to evaluate the different aspects of that. Also, in the importance of the access of information of citizens beyond academics, which are in need of that. So you need filtering, you need to provide access to readable versions of the research that is being done, which is tuned or for the different audiences that are there. But again, social networks, of course, are the source of a lot of problems, but they have been very useful during all this month.
Thank you. One more question, because I agree with you, obviously. But one thing that for me is a little bit complicated now is that we, as a science, we are evaluated for our publications. Okay, so 1 million tweets will we count as a publication too? So how can we deal with this situation? Okay.
Yes, totally. I agree 100% of you, and that's an issue that we have. Our students need their peer review papers to advance in their career. There is a competitions, and you're ranked by the number of papers you get in certain journals in particular. Yes, but at the same time, we have to remember that, for instance, I don't know, in CONICET, which is the largest R&D enterprise of our country, the colleagues that evaluate, the people that evaluate our career are colleagues. So we have to start discussing these things about ourselves, different measures of impact. There are different impacts that go beyond journals that are based in articles. And now there is access to a lot of them. For instance, it doesn't matter if you publish in a journal that is not a traditional something, but you can trace all the citations that have there. You can trace all the tweets that have them. You can trace if it has been harvested by Wikipedia, for instance. You know how many people read Wikipedia and how important it is, to generate information for the society. So maybe there will be some shifts in what's called altmetrics. But yeah, we have to discuss this. There's a lot of people in the evaluation which are more prone to adapt to new things. But of course, as a hierarchical institution, sometimes the people that evaluate you, it's older than you, and sometimes older people is less has less intentions, and there is of course a lot of a difficulty to change the status quo because there is survivor bias. that means that people who is successful in these systems, which we know it's somehow broken, do not want it to change because that's the way they became successful. So there is a way to be successful, but well, that's unequal for all the society. And for researchers itself, there are crystal. Well, there is a lot to discuss, but I think we're starting to appreciate some shift in scholarly communications and the research assessment of its impact.
Thanks a lot, Humberto, for your point of view. I like to. This is just open for everyone. Okay, I have questions, but if anyone have also questions for the speakers, you can do it. Also for the attendees.
About what you said about the relationship of tweets and publications, there is a publication research that make an index about dividing the publications with the tweets. So they make also how
the
much
Twitter index.
Yeah, the Kardashian
it has a name also.
Yeah, I don't know the name, but yeah.
But if I read well, they say that there were no correlation on the increase in the citation if you tweet more. It was against the Humberto's, I think. It's a Nature that from 2 weeks ago that says that tweets doesn't mean nothing for the citation of the paper. That because I was talking with a friend also that said, Juliana, you have to. I read this and I send the. Did you read, Humberto, this paper of Nature? I will send you.
I thought it was you were talking about the different one, which about that index, which the Kardashian index, which is like to try to generate the ratio of your followers and citation. And as if it's very big, it's like you are talking without authority in a topic that you don't have any knowledge about. But the citations, yeah, probably. I don't know. I don't know how you can translate that to correlations. What I have read, there are several articles that says that if you preprint your work, you get more citations and attention, which is something important. But yeah, Twitter, I don't know. But I meant Twitter more like as a proxy, you know, like if you follow certain persons, you can get the grasp of lots of info in a very narrow period of time. It could be terrific, but I mean, of course, there is hate, trolling, etc. But if you try, you can get a lot of info there.
Yeah.
Yes, you're right.
Juliana, now I have one question for you regarding your work, because you were working 200% during the pandemic when the rest of the scientific were remaining at home, more or less, no? So what was your main problem or obstacle to deal with, I mean, with your daily work, okay? You have supplies, reagents, everything was okay, or you need to spend more time on them?
We have to wait 1 month for the things that come, that we were setting up the new technology, so we have to wait 1 or 2 months to get the peptides, to get and we start with the one that, with the supply that we have to start. I live in Buenos Aires. I think that Buenos Aires was easier because at those time, 1 month after or 2 months after I get we get all the supplies ready to our lab. The Ministry of Science work on this, so it was easier. Like always, you know, like 2 months to get. I think that 2 months to get a supply directly from outside, it's quickly for Argentina. It's not quick for other countries, you know. In other countries, you have 5 days to get a supply, or 2 days, or overnight. The difficult, I think that the most difficult for us was to work at the same time that the knowledge was, it was really hard to read all the time and work on the on the lab. It was very, we were 12 hours there all the time reading and making the experiments. It was quite different than other times that we have a field and we read and then we say, okay, it was like all the day say, oh, this read this paper. Yes, we are right. Okay. And all the time thinking is it worth it or not? It worth it or not? It was like, that's, I think that is, and now it's worth it or not, doing this, worth or not, like, that's the most difficult for us in our mind, working in something that maybe, I think, for example, in 2 months, if the virus leave us, or in 5 months, that was expectation, maybe it's going down, and the pandemic you will never need a vaccine, maybe. It was so all the time in our thinking, it was all the different possibilities. That maybe we are working for nothing, or maybe the vaccines will reach here in very short time, and I don't know. I think that we never know if you are working for something that's worth it, of course. But in such a short time, it's like, and with the knowledge every day, it was very difficult for us. I don't know.
Yes, yeah, I can imagine that you need to read the paper from yesterday to plan the experiment of today. That will be really crazy. Okay, so now I have like a general question or something to start to think about it. So now that we don't have like regular conferences, Humberto points something about this. How can we make better networking? The things that we usually try to network during the coffee break or with the beer after the meeting, with this virtuality. So we have a lot of tools, but do we really have something to replace this face-to-face networking? I don't know what the rest of the people think about it.
I'm getting older, as Humberto said. I don't think that it can be the same as personal, but maybe there's some tool that we can enter a place where the body is near the other. I don't know.
We were working on, as NCPs, we were working on different tools to simulate this kind of small talks, you know, some exercise that you can put between one exercise and another to know better who are there, you know. We are working on that, and we are working on make the different webinars more interactive, you know, not only talk about how to prepare a proposal. So what is your experience? What is your best project, your worst, to get participate all the researchers. We are thinking on different kind of tools. And there are many new tools.
If I may say,
but I think they don't replace the personal interaction. I don't. It's impossible to replace that well.
If I may add something, we have discussed this a lot, and that was one of the first like, how do you say this, like, complain about virtual conference, the impossibility of informal interaction. That will be that aspect in particular, and what happens at random, that you meet a person that would be important in your career in a coffee break. That's something which is of course irreplaceable. But again, you know, the benefits, we think that the benefits of virtuality in terms of inclusion and democratization of meetings, are more important than this anecdotic data. But because we don't have like real numbers about the real benefits of this informal things. Nevertheless, as a compromise, oh, my dog is starting to bark. Anyway, as a compromise, there is there is the alternative of what we call local hubs. That means that do international virtual conference, but you get to meet, like, of course, during the pandemic, that this is not very easy, but you get to go to, I don't know, like to a university, and there you provide a hub where we all meet to join virtually with other hubs in different regions of the world. And so that doesn't have, you know, the carbon expense, etc. It provides the informal aspects, but of course you don't meet with international folks in person. But anyway, it's like a compromise.
Yeah, the session that we have with the current fellows, we have like a similar discussion. And one thing that surprised me was that everyone point out that the main problem is to get in touch with the big fish, you know? Because I don't know if you can send an email to the director of the Max Planck Institute in Göttingen just like this. But maybe during the coffee break, you can reach that person and start like this conversation or elevator pitch, whatever. So that was the main drawback that the current fellow mentions. And I really see this because sometimes these informal meetings can speed up your career just by chance. I don't know, Andreas, you want to say something?
Yeah, maybe some comments, because of course you could write an email. As I said, if you say in the first 3 lines what you would like to have from this director, maybe you have a chance. This is in general a problem, no? In the communication between Latin American and, for example, German or European scientific leaders, that they are involved in a huge network. And I see at the systemic level, you all are, of course, you are individuals, and you are thinking in how to optimize your work and your networking. But if you go a little bit higher on the systemic level, what we have seen last year in Germany, all the numbers of students, for example, from Latin America, PhD students, postdocs, everything is decreasing. So you will lose a lot of contacts if, for example, Argentina is not prepared to send more people to our programs. Because in Asia, there is not a problem. For China, there is not a problem to send us another 1,000 PhD students, because there is no pandemic in this size we have here in Argentina or in Europe. So we will see a speeding up of Asia and also for United States. And it's up to, let's say, initiatives at the national and, as I said, on the regional level, that this continent will really not be the forgotten one. Because this will you at the individual level, maybe the best, will always find a way to stay involved in the network and to participate and to travel 3 months to a lab in Germany, in UK, make some experiments and later then publish. Yeah, this is a mode of living, I know. Yeah, but it will. I fear really, because I'm now eight years living here in Argentina, and I see this danger. The cooperation will not increase, and for the individuals who stay in contact with colleagues, you should invest and you will remain in this network. But for the young people, for example, also in Germany, if in our institutes, if the machinery, if all the labs are closed for 6 months, all these PhD students without having data, it's not a question of open science and where you publish. You are not able to publish. And the DID, or I don't know how it's now with the Marie Curie, the financing is limited. And what's then? Yeah. Therefore, I'm really happy that our institutes were able to let's say to finance people which were losing their funding, because time was over but the experiments were interrupted. So the people were not able to write their thesis. Don't think about publications. And this is, I'm not talking about a few people. I'm talking about hundreds. Yeah? So for the networking in the future, I think it's a big challenge for the whole region. And therefore, my argument is you need more critical masses, not only to participate in a very special piece of a big project and be happy as an individual. I think you need more regional hubs, cooperation in between different institutions to become interesting for this bigger player in the north.
Thanks. Thank you, Andreas. So Paula, how can we increase networking through the Ministry of Science? What do you think?
We have a big problem that is the budget. This is a really big problem.
As usual in our country.
Yes, as usual. And that disappoints me a lot because we work a lot with this international cooperation, and then we have problem in the management of the project and during the project to can finish them. But I think we have really good researchers, and the world is looking Argentina when the foreigners come here to work. They won't stay in Argentina and they won't return also. That I think is a really good thing. Even if we don't have this supply that said Juliana, that I know it's a problem. We don't have a lot of infrastructure. We don't have a lot of supplies. But I think the future is the creativity and the knowledge. So we have both. And I think it's a good thing to attract investments and interest for our knowledge. So I think this is our plus different of other countries. One researcher told me about one project they were doing in Mendoza, and they need a kind of it was a machine to take some test of water. They didn't have this machine like they use in England, so they do it by hand. You know, a lot of people working testing the water, and when the researchers come here, said, "Oh, it's great. You have no, you don't commit a mistake." Because the machine, when it works, but they have a problem of electricity, you need to start everything again. There, we don't have this problem. And it was, you know, a local solution. I know we need more infrastructures and more investment, but I think this is this creativity and this love for more knowledge that we have that is different of other countries.
Thank you, Paula. So I don't know if anyone have another question because we are running on time. Virginia, you want to add something? Or we are okay?
Yeah, yes, I think it's very, very interesting, this conversation, discussion, and the main point here is that I think we should put up with this a long time. So that is very important because last year I said we were expecting that everything finished in July and we can go back at normal life, but then it's moving, and then we say summer, okay, but then now we are again near the autumn. So I think this may last a while. So we should face this challenge by changing our expectations, but also the way we interact. And in general, I would say that this has allowed me as a mom and with a lot of other activities to be in a congress almost every week internationally, and this was a good thing. Normally, I would not have been so present because it's very difficult to travel, also for the economical restraint. And a lot of programs I have applied, for instance, well, the George Foster Research Scholarship, they move the date so I can travel, and also there is another thing that when you use facilities, core facilities, that is the imaging program or the type of instruct and things like that. These are opening also the infrastructures virtually. So before you had to find some funding to go, but now it's also possible to start working at least at the beginning from home, and this is also an opportunity. So I think we looking at the bright side, at the half full glass. I think we as Latin America and Argentina, we have a very good opportunity to embrace this and grow. But of course, there are restraints. And with that, I think we.
Thanks. It's good to end with a positive view, Virginia. I like. Okay. So I think so. I want to thank again to all speakers, Andreas, Humberto, Juliana, Paula, to all the attendees and the rest of the people. So now, Virginia, now we made like a small closing of the meeting. I don't know if Charlotte is here.
Yes, Charlotte and Alejandro.
Alejandro also, okay.
So
I don't know if Gledson is all. No, Gledson is not here from Brazil. So first I want to thanks a lot to Gledson. Unfortunately, he's not here, but he really make a huge work to organize all this virtual conference, and also to Charlotte. They really make an impressive work. And yeah, that I think this is we discussed a few minutes ago, a good opportunity to everyone to keep in touch, to learn new things, and to share our experience. And I hope that the next one in Chile, maybe Alejandro, we can go there in person. We are not sure, but that's our hope. So that's from my side. I don't know if Charlotte wants to say something to wrap up. You are mute, Charlotte. I don't know if you want to talk.
Hello, can you hear me? Yeah, I'm sorry, because I lost my Zoom window, so I can see, not do anything anymore. But just to say that it was a real pleasure to support the Argentinian, Brazilian, and Chilean chapters organizing this second Latin America NCAA conference. And also, I would like to congratulate in particular Gledson, who I agree with you, Pablo, he did a wonderful job. And to me, the conference was a success because it gathered a very diverse audience. We had young researchers interested in MSCA. We had others who were recently awarded a fellowship and want to learn how to implement it. But we also had high-level speakers as the one that you gathered today, and also experts in open science, gender, geosciences. So it really shows how rich is the MCA community, right? And how wide are your topics of interest? And I think this is a very good point. And Also, I wanted to say that I was very happy because yesterday we had fellows from more than 120 MSCA fellows from many countries in Latin America and the Caribbean, and we discussed how to increase representativeness in the region. So I'm sure the good work will continue in the future, and I see that the future of MCA in the region with a lot of confidence. And actually, I really look forward to the next conference, hopefully in Chile or wherever it will be. I hope we can meet for real and be together. But in any case, it's always nice to work with you all. Thank you again and congratulations.
Thanks a lot, Charlotte, again for your work. Alejandro, you want to add something?
Oh, just to wrap up everything. So we had a wonderful meeting. Has been fantastic to join efforts with chapters from Brazil and Argentina. We are thrilled that we got invited. We just organized our chapter in Chile. Now we have few members, but we hope that we grow our associates so we can have a really strong support for our next meeting together, hopefully, if sanitary conditions allow in Chile, maybe. Just to thank the chairs, Pablo, Charlotte, Virginia, Gledson, for this amazing work that you have put to move forward this incredible conference. And thank to all the speakers. We all have learned a lot of it. It's a pity that we didn't have the chance to have coffee and share thoughts, but also allows this distance meetings allowed us to gather more people together without, the carbon footprints and all, the expenses that it all involves. So we have good things and bad things. Maybe in the future, we're going to have some middle points to combine both presential and non-presential meetings. So I'm really happy being part of this amazing conference, and thank you.
Thanks a lot, Alejandro. So Virginia, you are really closing the conference.
Well, really, it was an amazing week with a lot of themes, and especially because Marie Curie Alumni Association is really taking care that the science that we do reach another level, not only in the excellence academic point of view, but also as we learn from the talk of Ben in the research culture, it's very important that we also make excellence on how we do science and how we treat ourselves as scientists. And this all we have learned this week have helped us think about it, and researchers that will make is making the future of each of our fields. It's very important that we can set a higher standard in the quality of our work, both personally in the group or in the conditions that we work. So I think with that, I will thank you. I would say that instead of coffee, I will have a beer now, or cocktail. This will miss. But well, I'm positive that we will meet in Chile in the beach in March and next year. Hope we can invite you also there. Thank you all for your work, and Gledson, incredible what you do. Thank you.
Gracias.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you. Thank you.
Gracias, Juliana. Paula, que hizo el esfuerzo de presentar a pesar del COVID en carne propia. Muchas gracias. Bueno, y gracias, Humberto, también por tu presencia.
Por favor, un gusto. Hasta luego.
Bueno,
Chao,
hasta la
chao.
próxima. Bye, bye. See you later.